Hey, hello, and welcome back to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show. Live, folks. It's May the 10th, and it is time for our weekly broadcast of the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show. Live, coming at you on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I'm trying to get the IG still, folks. We're not there, but always starting off with a little bit of Bob. Don't let them fool you. Stay woke. We've got a great show for you. It's May the 10th, 2023. We got a great guest, and we'll bring that guest on shortly for you. But before we do that, we're going to get started as we always do. And I'm glad you're back again for another live show here with the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show live. My name is Mark Kennedy. I'm the VADSBC chair, and I enjoy doing this. And I'm going to start off doing what we always do every week. And I just say to you, welcome back. And are you taking care of yourself, keeping yourself healthy, wealthy, and wise? I'm sure. Welcoming you, all you small business owners, soon to be small business owner, you Democratic small business owners. And hopefully you supporters of Virginia Democratic small business owners, and you're out there doing what you need to do to make things right. We've got a long game in front of us here in Virginia. You know, we got to get back statewide offices from the governor to the lieutenant governor to the attorney general, as well as trying to get back control of the Virginia House of Delegates. And to do that, you know what? We need voting rights to make sure you come out and do it. Virginia's got great voting rights, but you know what? Good thing we still got the Senate, folks, or we'd be in trouble, because voting rights are being attacked all over the country. And one of the reason why I started this podcast is really to talk about that issue, because voting rights are essential, as I always say, to a democracy. It's like air to your body. If you do not have voting rights, then you do not have a voice. Voting rights are absolutely essential. You've got to have voting rights. Unless you have voting rights, you won't be able to elect the people in office at a local, at a state, or at a federal level that are going to represent the ideals that you have as Democrats, and also be able to do all the things and have access to all the things the founding folks of this country have put into our Constitution. Your constitutional rights to free and unfettered access to the polls. Full stop. Well, let me just ask you, how's your health? I hope your health is good. Hope your health is fine. And I hope that you are able, got my technology going off all the time. My technology is always jumping in the way of me doing my podcast. But you know what? That's okay. That's why we're informal but engaging, and hopefully intriguing, hopefully giving you something you need and that you can use in order to make your day a better day for yourself and for your community. But listen, what was I saying? That's right. What I was saying was I hope your health is good. COVID is still out there, but it's not as bad as it was. I've had all my shots. I don't wear my mask all the time. I'm still talking about it because it ain't over. But you know what? I'm going to be doing some traveling. I'm going to be doing some other things. I'm on the plane, and trust me, when it is appropriate, I still wear it. And I notice here in Virginia, under certain circumstances, folks are still wearing their masks, and that's okay. But whatever it is, do whatever you need to do to make sure that you stay healthy, your family stays safe, and you are out there doing the do that we need you to do in order to elect more Dems. So that's what I'm talking about. So get out there and get that part done. Listen. So what I'm going to do first is start what I always do, talking about that trifecta of civil rights. Yes. What is that trifecta of civil rights that I always talk about? I talk about 1964. The Civil Rights Act. I talk about 1965, which is the Voting Rights Act, and I talk about 1968, the Fair Housing Act. You know what? Those things are very important. Let me tell you why. I'm going to go right into it like I always do. In 1964, we had the Civil Rights Act of 1964, basically prohibiting the discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. And as later appended, it basically added the fact that we would also be able to have no discrimination based upon race or sex in hiring, promoting, or firing. Okay. So that is what is extremely important about that act. Well, you would think all that would be, easy for people to understand. Why would we need an act for it? But we did. The Democrats got it passed. As you can see, in that picture, there's Lyndon Baines Johnson in the middle. And of course, that's Martin Luther King in the middle of the picture with the president. And then, of course, on both sides, on one side, you see protesting about the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And on the right side, that picture at the bottom is children riding the bus together. I just want to make it clear. Everybody has the same civil rights. This is how things are supposed to be done in all sectors of the United States and territories of the United States. How a democratic society is supposed to act with civil rights. Apparently, the Constitution wasn't good enough. No problem. We passed that act. But then you say, well, what came next? Well, we still had to go even a little bit further because people just didn't get it. And they were still doing things that weren't good out there when it came to voting rights. So the following year, we had the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The act was signed into law on August 6th. Again, President Lyndon Baines Johnson. It outlawed discriminatory voting practices adopted in many southern states and states in the north as well, including things like literacy tests or as a prerequisite for voting, or all other type of voting suppression that has gone on since 2013, when the Supreme Court, in all of its wisdom, decided, there's no more racism or problems here in the country. Let's get rid of that Voting Rights Act. It's not needed. Of course, there's President Obama. I mean, couldn't be elected president, an African American, unless all racism was gone. No, there is some biasness. There are still people who are bad people out there who don't want to allow people just to have their rights that they're guaranteed as Americans. Just because the president got elected doesn't mean squat, obviously. But that is what they kind of thought. And they said, well, if you don't like it, folks, you can always add it back into law. So the Supreme Court said so. We'll just take out that pre-clearance piece, and if you need to put it back in, you all just put it back in. Man, and as soon as they did that, the floodgates were opened back. We might as well took a huge sprint back to the past, not back to the future. And we were back there fighting the same issues we're fighting that we thought we had accomplished in 1965. We are now dealing with them more than 50 years later. Do the math, at least 50. Now it's 2023. By the way, in 1965, I was 5 years old, and I'm now 63. So you do the math. It's a long time, right? Apparently not long enough. So we had to, we have to make sure we get voting rights back. Now, what's the next thing? You probably say, well, okay, we got civil rights, how people are supposed to be treated on their jobs, and make sure everybody's fair. Then you say, okay, now when it comes to voting, we're a democracy. Here's how everybody gets the right to vote. What's next? What do I need? You know what it is? Everybody's got to have a place to live. So guess what the next thing was? It was the Fair Housing Act of 1968. And it expanded on previous acts, which, by the way, prohibited discrimination concerning the sale, the rental, and the financing of housing based on race, religion, national origin, sex, and as later amended, for the handicapped and for people's family status, whether they're single or not. Whether or not, in this case, nowadays, whether or not they're LGBTQIA or not. All those sorts of things you could not discriminate on people on, but people want to discriminate based on, housing, based on whether or not they want you to vote, based on whether or not, your civil rights, whether or not you can basically go into a store and buy something or not. Just plain ugliness. And we said, you know what? The United States is a fantastic place. We do a lot of stuff really jacked up, but we eventually, after trying all the bad things, we get it right. And we pass 3 fantastic, groundbreaking, fundamental Civil Rights Act. We passed the Civil Rights Act, which showed the people how they had to act and what people had access to. We passed the Voting Rights Act, and we passed the Fair Housing Act, and said, okay, since you all couldn't figure it out yourself, the Supreme Court and Americans, and people think, well, the Supreme Court passed this? No, it wasn't the Supreme Court that passed it. It was you who passed it. It was the people of the United States and their representatives in the Congress. That's right, the House of Representatives, United States senators, and of course, if you haven't forgotten from your 12th grade government class, you got 3 separated powers. The Congress passed the laws with the senators and the representatives. The president is responsible in the in the executive branch for signing those laws into being with his signature. And then, of course, the judicial branch, which I said earlier, is responsible for making sure that the laws are constitutional and people have an ultimate court to look back up to. So you have the 3 separated bodies of government. You have the legislative body that makes the laws. You have the judicial body, which makes sure the laws are constitutional. And you have the executive, which is responsible for carrying out those laws and being the head diplomat and being the commander in chief and having the bully pulpit for talking to the American people. So there you go, right? 9 people on the Supreme Court, 435 people in Congress, and the president and the vice president, or a singular president. Really, it's just the president. The vice president is only there in case something happens to the president. But this is how things go in this country. Some people would rather not have it this way. Some people would rather not have what the founding fathers of this country put out there, because they think that, well, it didn't include everybody. It's only supposed to include certain people. That's wrong. It includes everybody, every American that is born in this country, and every American that is naturalized in this country has the rights that the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights grants them. Full stop. No changes. But that's not going to stop bad people from doing bad things. My God, Cain and Abel. My God, you've got heaven and hell. My God, you've got good people and bad people. And you just have people who simply have a difference of opinion. But it's one thing to have a difference of opinion and to follow Robert's Rules of Order, right? No problem. But that's not what we have. We have people out here trying to hurt people as a result of these things, of different beliefs, whether it be of race, whether it be of gender, whether it be of usually that's where the fault lines lie: race, gender, or now sometimes religion. But you know what? That's the reason why the people left where they were in Europe and came to the New World and the United States. And this country was eventually founded where people could have religious freedom, where they wouldn't have a monarchy, one person having rule over them just based on, royalty, or they wouldn't have a theocracy, which is one person based on one religion that rules over everybody, or have a dictatorship where one person rules over everyone because he has all the weapons and the guns, an autocracy. No, we have a democracy, and voting rights is what's important. You've got to have voting rights in order to make sure you have a representative government. That's right. As Benjamin Franklin said, well, you've got a democracy, or a republic, as he called it then. People know it, a republic, if you can keep it. Which means if you can keep it means that you have to protect it, you have to participate, or you will have people, yes, it is often said, and it is often stated, when you take the oath of office, you need to protect this country from enemies from within and from without. You will have people who will try to stop the democratic process from taking place in this country. And the only way you can make sure that that doesn't happen is by getting involved. in the short game and in the long game. That is your civic responsibility. Or the people who have nothing but bad things and that they want to do, taking your constitutional rights away from you, they're going to do it. They're not going to do it through the voting. Through voting, they're going to do it through any means that they figure, by the gun or whatever else they want to do to make it happen. And it is your responsibility to make sure that that doesn't happen by participating in the democracy, but not allowing bad people to do things while the majority of people remain silent. You have to get involved in your government. You have to run for local office. You have to run for state office. You have to run for federal office. If you can't run, then what you need to do is support those candidates by voting or by providing resources with finances or giving them your time and making sure you're talking to your neighbors, making sure that the loudest mouth in the room doesn't have sway over the majority of Americans who don't feel that way but are silent or too busy making money or doing whatever they're doing or with their families, their jobs, and they look up and they wonder what happened. Well, you have to pay attention, because while you're not paying attention, people are looking to take your rights away from you. Voting rights. And let me tell you, we took a long way to get to where we need to get to in this country. But here, there's a good news is this. Let me get off my soapbox for a minute. I'm going to tell you about H.R. 4, which is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which was passed in the 116th Congress. And basically what it did was it took those things that the Supreme Court took out of the law and puts it back into the law by putting the pre-clearance piece in before any changes can be made to any voting rules in any jurisdictions of the United States. It has to happen at least 180 days before an election. And also, it's got to get pre-cleared through the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. So the Voting Rights Act does that and a few more other things, like giving government more authority to send federal observers to monitor jurisdictions. And also, it's when they do that, they're looking to make sure that there's no discrimination that's going on at the polls during voting. I mean, so John Lewis, who was a former congressman, you know, John Lewis was on the Pettus Bridge back in the 60s, got his head smashed open by the racist police at that time that didn't want them to march for the right to vote. And on the James Pettus Bridge, they took horses and police with billy clubs and big sticks and stuff, and they beat and attacked all of those peaceful, nonviolent protesters, including the person I'm telling you about, John Lewis, who was Congressman John Lewis out of Georgia, Atlanta, and eventually he became that. But he was just a college student back then in the 60s, and they tried their best to kill him and everyone on that bridge to prevent them simply from marching and asking for the right to vote. While you sit here and do nothing, you got to do something. Are you willing to go out on the James Pettus Bridge and get your head busted open because they've taken your voting rights? Because that's what they intend to do. That's what they're doing. You've got to get involved. So that's one of the things that are out there now. You also have H.R. 1. Let me tell you about that. We didn't stop there in that Congress too. In H.R. 1, they had what's known as For the People Act, which is a bill that basically came out, and what it did was it says, we need to expand expand access to voting, and by adding things like same-day voter registration, 2 weeks of early voting, banning the purging of voting polls. You're probably saying, what's that? Well, banning the voting polls means you come in and vote one year, the next year you don't vote for whatever reason or whatever the next election was, then you come back at the next election and your name's no longer in it. All of a sudden you either can't vote or they make you put a provisional ballot in. It's just a way to suppress the vote and make people get upset and not vote, and jurisdictions are playing that game. The other thing that they play with is they have a lack of available polls near your home, who's going to ride 20 miles to get to a poll when they got to go to work? Or what the other trick that they do is that they say where a voting polling location may need at least 25 or whatever the right number of voting machines there, they'll have maybe 10% of those machines there. So the lines are really long, even though it's in your neighborhood, you got to wait, an inordinate amount of time, or, 3 hours, 4 hours to vote, when it really only should take you maybe 20 minutes to get in and get out. Also, what they're doing is they're making sure that the early voting is available, right? You say, what's early voting? Well, early voting is voting by absentee ballot. So you don't have to jump in line. Basically, all you need to do is fill out the who you want to elect. You take it back to the office, and the location, you drop off your vote. Simple as that, easy peasy. We've been doing it for decades with military and people all over the world. Americans don't just live in America, they live everywhere. And that doesn't mean that they somehow give up their right to vote simply because they're not living in this particular state where they vote. And plus, the people in the state where they vote, people may be elderly. They can't get out, or people can't get them to the polls. So they need to be able to have that way of voting. And it has been working for decades without a hitch. Now, the other thing that we have is For the People's Act of 2021 puts back into place what I talked about earlier with the pre-clearance. It also has commissions to get rid of gerrymandering. You're saying, what's gerrymandering? Well, gerrymandering is what they do, politicians do. Instead of the people picking the politicians use the census and the voting maps to pick the people. Meaning, what they do is they create these districts, right? Congressional districts or voting districts. And based upon knowing how certain people vote in certain districts, they gerrymander those districts. So all the people who are going to vote for them, they'll stuff in one district, right? So they're guaranteed to win that district, as opposed to just saying, hey, we had a census that we do every 10 years. And the reason why we do the census every 10 years is because people move. There's more people that are born, people who are in the country, and people who are coming to things just change. Americans are not just living in one spot, they move around, right? And as a result, every 10 years, the Constitution requires is that we count every single person in the country. Did you hear me? Every single person, not just citizens, everybody. And that's basically how they decide where your resources go. But I am getting off track. And what I am trying to really let you know is that census is also used for deciding the congressional districts and whether or not you should have, maybe you've got more people who live in that state, in that area, so you get more congressmen or you get less. No matter what, everybody gets 2 senators, but the congressional districts change by the American populations. And the politicians try to get involved with that and really try to gerrymander that so there's more of one party than the other. They've done it on both sides, but either way, they need to stop it, quit it, and just let the people have a fair access to the polls, no gerrymandering, wherever people live, let the congressional lines go where they go, and allow them to vote for whoever their congressman that lives in that area, as opposed to them having a congressman that does not live in their area because of the gerrymandering. It's crazy, but yep, that's what goes on. I'm not kidding you. But anyway, folks, I'm not just running my mouth here. There's a call to action, okay? And the call to action is that you need to call your congressman. There's a great activism app out there called 5 Calls. You can download that on your Google phone. You can download that on your app, on your on your iPhone, on your Android, which is Google, or your iPhone, which is Apple, and it's called 5 Calls. You just download it. You go to Google Play. Google Play is in the is if you have an Android, and if you go to the App Store if you have an iPhone, and you download 5 Calls. And man, that is a fantastic app. Once you download and put in your information, your where you are, where you live, your zip code, it has all the things in there that tells you about everything. And you just click it, and then all of a sudden it brings up the phone numbers. You push the number, and you say, "Hey, Mr. Congressperson," or "Hey, whoever it is there that's in your 5 Calls app, I know about." HR4 with the John Lewis Voting Rights app, And hey, I know about HR 1, which is the For the People app. You need to vote for it, put it in there, make sure the president can sign it. I'm watching, and I'm going to not choose you if you don't do what you need to do. You won't be getting my vote. So, boom, simple as that, right? Easy peasy. That's the way it works in a democracy. Either do what the people want or you're out. That's the way it goes. The way it goes. So you better be doing what the people want, and not only just what they want, but what's constitutional. You just can't be saying, hey, I want unconstitutional stuff and get it, because unconstitutional stuff means you get a democracy, autocracy, right? A monarchy. You don't want that, trust me. You want a democracy where you're represented by the people who you vote for. So make sure when people run around and say, hey, there's a lot of people who either don't know or they vote for stuff that they don't understand, that it is not in the Constitution, that people are trying to do things that are unconstitutional. So you've got to be there for the long game. You've got to be there for the short game. You've got to stay woke. Yes, stay woke. Do you want to be asleep? You can, trust me. If you think staying woke is a bad thing, you try walking around sleepwalking on the highway and see what happens to you. Don't let them people fool you. You heard Bob Marley earlier say it. Don't let them fool you, man. They wouldn't be working so hard to prevent you from voting if it wasn't important. Vote. Support your local, state, and federal representatives and get involved at whatever level that you can. There you go. I've said it. I've laid it all out there. Folks, we've got a fantastic guest coming up. And I am going to tell you all about her in just 1 minute. But you know what? First, you have to remember to go vote. And folks, we've got a fantastic guest today. I've known her for so many years. Oh, this lady has receipts. She is absolutely fantastic. I am so happy to have her on the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show live. And she's got receipts because she's been doing work for a long time. I won't tell you how old. Well, I'll tell you how old I am, but that's also none of your business. But let's just say I didn't have all this gray, but for some reason, she has stayed fantastically young and beautiful. And without further ado, I'm going to tell you a little more about our special guest. And folks, our special guest tonight is Rose Chu. Yes, Rose Chu is the treasurer of the 8th District Democratic Committee. And she's also one of the founders of the Democratic Asian Americans of Virginia. That acronym is DAAV. And for all you folks who didn't know, this month is Asian American Island Pacific Islander Month, AAPI, not AAIS. I got that mixed up. That's Asian American Pacific Islander Month. And Rose also chairs she chairs a lot of different organizations through the years since I've known Rose. She also used to be head of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee, Diversity Committee, and then the committee. This is before the committee had all these other organizations, but she was kind of like the pre-runner to all this. There was now we have the Latino caucus, we have the African American or Black caucus, we've got the Asian caucus. But she was chairing these organizations years ago before they actually broke out to their various different groups. And I'm very much impressed with Rose because she's worked so hard for so many different groups, for the committee and just for Fairfax County and the state of Virginia for so long. And because this month is, as I said, is Asian American Pacific Islander Month, we needed to have someone on so we have a chance and have an opportunity to give Rose her flowers, Rose, as she deserves to see them while she's still out here getting stuff done. Let me tell you more about her. She also organizes the Democratic booths at several ethnic festivals. She also identifies Korean, Vietnamese, Chinese voters in Fairfax County, in Loudoun County, and Prince William County. Basically, pretty simple, by using their last names. She figures out who that is, and every year, in Virginia, we have elections every year, so we never get a break. So every year, she puts together a 6 languages sample ballot for the Fairfax County Democrats. And, that's 6 different languages for Asian American Pacific Islander folks, so that everybody sees. And of course, there's English too. So if you throw in English, that's 7. And if you throw in the other languages, I forgot how many different languages are spoken in Fairfax County. Let's just say it's more than 10. And Rose, who used to chair the diversity committee, which included everybody, she'll be able to talk a little bit about that. Like I said, she's pretty dynamic in that way. Rose is also a little bit more about her personally. She's a health policy analyst and studies private insurance and Medicaid. Also, Rose went to Penn at the University of Pennsylvania in the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, where she has her undergraduate degree in math and economics. She also has a master's in business administration and healthcare administration and healthcare administration. I'm reading this right. And also she has her master's in public policy. So she's been really getting it done. She's eminently qualified to do what she does in healthcare and the various other different things I've told you about. But also she's been volunteering for the AARP for all you folks who ever gotten to the age of 48, when AARP starts mailing you incessantly telling you they want you at least 2 years before you're 50. The AARP, she's been a tax aide for 15 years, and she's a certified, what do you call it, application counselor to help people get enrolled in health insurance as well. So she's been a tax aide for 15 years, helping the AARP. She's also a certified application counselor to get people enrolled in healthcare. I did tell you earlier that what she's been doing in the private sector for 25 years is she's been a policy, well, she's going to tell you more about that, but she spent 25 years in the federal government and she spent 15 years in the private sector. So she is eminently qualified. And if I got those two numbers mixed up and the areas mixed up, don't worry, Rose is going to let you know. And I probably screwed it up, but that's okay. She'll clear it up. Now, listen, the other thing is that let's talk a little bit about Rose from a personal point of view. Rose, when she wants to retire, and when she is retired, I don't think she's going to retire. I'm just going to tell you that right now, folks. But she claims to retire at some point, and when she does that, she's going to play bridge, take art classes, and not do anything besides just chill out. But it doesn't sound like Rose. I think she'll just be doing those things and all the other things she's been doing. She's fantastic. And one more thing about Rose is during the pandemic, she got to know her neighbors a little bit better. She had a lot of coffee with them, a lot of talks. We had 2 years to do it. And some of them, she still goes on walks with them. So, folks, I want to let you know one thing about Rose. Here's her graphic. There she is. You see her with the beautiful face, and then all that information about her, and the fact that it's Asian American Pacific Islander Month. And then you have the logo down there, or not the logo, but the URL for the DAAV organization, which is the Democratic Asian Americans of Virginia, and their website is right there below, VAAsiandemocrats.org. So she's just fantastic. And folks, without further ado, and I know you've been waiting for this magic moment, so we're going to go ahead and have that moment now, because I want to be able to bring in, that's right, a little louder, folks, a little louder, a little longer. Let's bring in Rose. And Rose, are you ready for us? We're going to bring you into the stream, and there she is. Rose, how are you?
Yeah.
She deserves this.
Doing fine.
One of the Democrats I've known for years. She's been doing this since she's 5 years old. Rose, how are you? Woo, the people love you. Woo, come on, yes.
I'm doing fine.
All that love, all those flowers, Rose. It's fantastic to see you. How are you doing, Rose Chu?
I am doing really well, thank you. Yeah. No, actually, I started in high school in politics. I actually started canvassing for George McGovern. Can you believe that?
George McGovern.
Judge McGovern. And I walk dogs and I rake leaves and I raised $60. And back then, $60 was a hell of a lot of money, right?
That was a lot of money back then. You raised $60 and turned it over to the Democrats, walking dogs
Yes.
and raking leaves.
Yes.
Heck, I can't even find a kid to rake my leaves. For $100, they won't do it. Oh, that's fantastic, Rose. But tell us your story. You know, I just gave just a brief thumbnail sketch of you, but tell us your story. How did you get into this game?
Well, let me tell you about me first, since I came to America. I was born in Taiwan. My dad was a diplomat, so that ended up coming to D.C. when I was 2 years old, and I went to D.C. public school when I was 13 years old. And I think it's great. Now people want to live in D.C., but unfortunately, back in the 60s, and so we're leaving D.C. So, I work for the federal government now, and almost all of our young people live in D.C. or wish they could afford to live in D.C. So I think it's great that people want to live in D.C. because, like I said before, people were leaving D.C. when I was growing up.
Right.
I am actually going to go to Malaysia and Taiwan at the end of this month. I have not been back to Taiwan since I was in college, so I'm sure it's changed a lot. But the food's supposed to be really good, so I'm going to have a very nice vacation there.
Wow, that's going to be fantastic. How long are you going to be out of the country?
Almost 2 weeks. I'm not looking forward to the plane rides, but you know, you have to take the plane rides to get there.
Well, you could take a boat.
I could sleep on the
plane. That boat is a longer trip.
You know, I'm afraid of boats. I do not want to take a boat trip.
So
I won't watch the movie Titanic. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's fantastic. You know, that's kind of funny because similarly, I'll be taking a trip to Africa this summer. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, and it's going to be 2 weeks. So both of us will be kind of out there, you know, checking out the roots for 2 weeks. So that's pretty cool. Come on, we're not here to talk about
I'm sure
the
food's very good there too.
Oh, I love to eat wherever I go. I have yet to find a place where I won't eat the food. I will eat wherever I'm at. Tell us some more about so you started off in what, junior high school, raising money for the Democrats.
High school,
high school. So your dad was a diplomat, right?
My dad was. So I did some politics in school, but then in college or grad school, and then I met a friend who was involved with the Mason Democrat, and she said come to this event, and that's got me started. It just takes it usually takes somebody, you know, a friend brings you along. Not too many people go in by themselves. Yeah.
Well, a lot of times,
but so
that's usually, you're right. That's how it usually happens. Somebody who's involved civically says, "Hey, why don't you help out?" and invite you to come out, right?
Yeah. Yep. So I've been with the Mason Democrats almost 40 years. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
But hey, I do it because the Democrats are the best party. They want to improve this country, and unlike the other party. Plus, hey, Democrats are more fun, right? They're definitely more fun.
Democrats are a lot more fun. And well, it's like herding cats with Democrats because we come in so many different flavors. But man, when all those flavors come together, man, they got some power. You are absolutely right.
That's right.
And for folks who don't know what Mason Democrats are, I'm just going to explain to you real quick since we're on the World Wide Web. Mason District is one of the 9 districts in Fairfax County, and she is in the Mason District. And you've been with them for 40 years. I don't believe that. When did you get started? When you were like 5? Ridiculous. Tell us more. Tell us more.
Okay, so like I said, I put together a sample ballot for the Fairfax Democrats. They use it for, they don't use it for the primary, but I put together one for the primary, and we're going to use it at a few in Mason. But
Okay.
we'll put together a sample ballot in different languages November. So because we both speak Spanish, Vietnamese, and Korean, the actual official ballot does have Spanish, and then I add a couple. I add Chinese, Arabic, and sometimes Hindi. So that's how I get the 6 or 7 languages. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So the Fairfax Democrats, they put together big posters with these different languages to put at the early voting places and at farmers markets and other places where people can see this. So that makes me feel better, because I think people feel more included if they see a language that they understand. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then we have all these Asian festivals. Oh my gosh, last year, our Democratic Asian Americans, we had booths at, we had them at the Vietnamese festival, the Korean, the Indian, the Pakistani, the Afghan. We did a hell of a lot. Chinese, they added Chinese last year for the first time. So we had booths at all of those. And we have the materials for all the Democrats, and we answer questions. We do voter registration. And of course, they all have food too. So our volunteers, they can all grab some food while they're volunteering, which is really nice. Food, you have food, right?
Hey, if you volunteer, get people to volunteer, you need to at least feed them, give them something to drink, right?
Right. And it's even if they can get some ethnic food while they're working.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know. We're having some technical difficulty. It sounds like you may be getting a delay on my voice.
You can't
say that again, Rose.
Yeah, you're blanking out on me too.
This is crazy. I don't know why it's doing it. But go ahead and repeat Korean, what you said.
I mean, I am an expert on Korean, Vietnamese, and Chinese names, last names, first names, middle names. So I put together my own list of first names and last names, but then I found that California voter registration form actually has country of birth. So I got a friend of mine who's a retired statistician, and I asked him to pull all the Orange County, all the voters who were born in these East Asian countries, and he got a list of them. So I have a real list. You really almost have to, I really look at almost every name, because Lee's especially, 60% of the voters with the last name Lee in Chantilly are Korean. Can you believe that? But of course, if you were in other parts of Virginia, they're going to be
90% white people, right?
Last name Lee, and yeah, right, but not in Fairfax County. Are Asian.
They're Asian.
Very interesting. So actually, this dovetails with some of my work. It's not my project, but people I work with, they have a contractor that has figured out algorithms with last name, first name, and address. So census areas, census tract, and they can figure out percentage-wise who is a Black, who is white, and who is Hispanic. So I found out that there's names like William, that half the people named Williams are Black. And they have figured it out. There's certain names. Yeah, and you probably know the names too. And so there are political consulting companies that have figured this out. And that's how, I mean, they can't tell if a person, percentage-wise, they can figure out if a person is Black, white, or Hispanic. It's not absolute. Like I can figure out if it's in names, it's almost 99% sure that, you have a name like the Asian. The trouble is, though, they're my last name and names like Chang and Yang, can be Korean, Vietnamese, or Chinese. So that's why I have to look at the first name and the middle name to figure out, to further identify someone. And the reason we do this is that we do have volunteers that make phone calls in those languages. We also want to know what areas Korean voters are in, or Vietnamese voters. And there's certain campaigns that may be able to mail to those particular voters in those languages. So it helps to know where people live. Yeah.
It sounds like you pretty much have gotten that down to a science. I think probably the only thing that might even be more creative for you with this is using ChatGPT, that AI. I bet you it'll figure out a couple other ways to find people too, right?
Oh, that's true. I wish they had it a few years ago. They would have saved me some work. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that is the wave of the future. When people figure out how to use that tool, I mean, they're going to be doing a lot of creative stuff, because you can check all kind of data sets with ChatGPT. Kind of an amazing tool. We got to make sure we figure that out. So now,
right. That's right.
Tell me a little more about what else do you want to tell us? I'm going to let you drive this conversation. What else do you want to talk about?
So what I've identifying voters, I don't work on this particular project, but people in my office do. So the marketplace health insurance, where you can get subsidies, tax subsidies to buy health insurance, 30 or 40% of the people do not identify their race, ethnicity. So we have a contractor that uses these algorithms to figure out what percentage of the enrollees on the marketplace are Black, white, Hispanic, or Asian. We found when we did that, from 20 to 22, number of Blacks that have bought health insurance and then the number of Hispanics has gone up by 50%. And we wouldn't have known this because a lot of them don't put down their race or ethnicity, especially Hispanics. I think they don't want to say they're white or Black sometimes. They want to just be known as Hispanic.
Well, that's too bad. In America,
some of them are afraid.
Yeah. Oh, you're saying some of them are afraid they're going to be. Well, where they come from the government, they've been, harassed. So, or things happen to them. So I notice a lot of immigrants, regardless of race, don't want to give their names, whether they're documented or not. They don't do it, right? They probably have a good reason for not.
I guess I'm a big believer. I'm a big believer in data, though, because otherwise you don't know what's happening.
Exactly.
There's something called data disaggregation. Especially in a lot of the Asian groups. There's so many different Asian groups, and there are certain groups that have they don't have health insurance as much as others, like the Koreans and the Vietnamese, because they work for small businesses or they're self-employed. They don't have the health coverage that, say, the Chinese and the Asian Indians do, because they work for usually larger firms. And there's certain diseases also that the Vietnamese and the Cambodians are more likely to have, maybe even the Pakistanis. So it really varies among all of these different age.
So you're saying, as a result of not having health insurance, a lot of potential illnesses could be identified earlier if they had a general practitioner, as opposed to going when things have gotten so bad, right?
Yeah. Well, it's health coverage. It's also maybe diet and the countries that they came from, maybe some environmental issues too. But there are so many differences with all the different Asian groups. So data disaggregation allows us to do more studies. And then Pacific Islanders as well. And there are not as many of them. So I know the census and other groups.
What would be a Pacific Islander? Explain what that is. People don't know.
The Samoans, the people from Guam, Samoa, Marshall Islands, and there are a lot of islands that I don't even remember all their names, but different groups. Yeah, and they all have different health issues too. But I know the federal government is trying to get more data on their health status and the different problems they have with healthcare.
So would you say
data is it's very important. Data is very important.
It's extremely important because it gives you real life proof of what's going on. I wanted to ask you, what's your assessment for small businesses and the healthcare policies that are available through the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare? Do you think, what's your assessment? Just, I don't want to paint your picture. You paint it for me.
So companies with fewer than 50 employees are not required to have health insurance. And actually, maybe they're better off. Their employees can get health insurance on the marketplace and get premium and tax credits that are based on their income. So that's probably, then the small business doesn't have to pay they could pay higher wages instead, or give them some other benefits. So I think what's going to happen is that, and small businesses too, it's hard for them to decide what kind of health plan they want, right? They can get quotes from different insurers, but most of them don't have the expertise to really know the differences between these health plans. So I think what's going to happen in the future, and already there's some legislation about it, that small businesses can give their employees a certain amount of money, and the employees can take that money and buy insurance on the marketplace. The trouble is that there's some tax advantages or disadvantages that needs to be worked out. But I think that's what's going to happen in the future, is that smaller employers won't be providing the health insurance themselves. They'll be giving money to their employees, and those employees will be able to shop on the marketplace with premium tax credits. And I think that's the way it's going to work.
I think that's a good idea.
So we're lucky that
I was just saying that I think that's a good idea.
It's the average is like
getting some delay here. Hang in there with us, Rose. There's some delays that are happening. It's our internet connection.
It helped. It's like $25,000. Are we?
Can you
Maybe
repeat
not.
that? Rose, you're going to have to repeat what you said because you kind of blanked out.
Have gone up way too high.
Okay.
Average premiums have just gone up way too high. Even employers have trouble. It shouldn't be up to the employers to pay for the health insurance. It really is more of a society burden, and I think that's what it's gonna be like that more in the future.
Well, Medicare for all, I thought was a good idea that Tim Kaine was pushing at one point. But the best thing is universal coverage, where everybody's covered, and just put this thing to bed. Take a certain amount of our tax, like every other major Western power, and just say, hey, we're providing healthcare coverage at this level to all of our citizens. If you want more, you can get more, but at least you've got this bare minimum safety net that's there for people, right?
That's right. Yeah. And the Affordable Care Act, it's done a lot of good. We dropped the uninsurance rate in half, but still, there's more to do.
Yeah, there's more to do. Absolutely.
So this is Asian. Yeah. This is Asian American Pacific Islander Month, and I do want to say something about there have been anti-Asian crimes happening, and it's unfortunate that Asians have been targeted by some people, and especially the elderly. They're afraid to walk in Chinatown. This is unbelievable. Chinatown San Francisco is half Asian, and some people just feel unsafe to walk around. I'm glad that hasn't happened as much here, but New York, San Francisco, there's been a lot of crimes against Asians. And well, it comes down to there's too many guns out there, too many guns.
Also, I think since the new administration and the law that got passed regarding that violence against targeting Asians, which is definitely a form of what do you call it? What do we call that term? I'm trying to use the right term here. It's escaping me for a minute, but it's not like any other crime, but it's more specific. It's a political or race or
hate crimes.
Hate crime,
hate crime,
word, right?
Yeah,
it's a hate crime, and that sort of thing is something that you know has not happened a lot in this area, or I'm pretty sure it's happened in some cases, but I've noticed since the new administration, we've seen and heard a lot less of that. As a matter of fact, compared to what was happening prior to the Democrats being elected.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Absolutely.
Hope so.
Yeah. So what else? Give us some more news. Tell me what else is going on with Rose Chu. What's happening?
I got for the 13th CARE Act, and it paper about how many people got health insurance under the Affordable Care Act, and so I got invited to the White House, and it was really great. It was a small group, about 250 people. People had worked on in the Obama administration and this administration, and it was nice to see some folks that had done.
Wow, you got cut off again.
Have you been to the White House?
Have I been to the White House? Not as an invitee, as a tourist. You know, I'm not that important. Only people who do fantastic things like you get invited to the White House. Maybe if I win a college championship or something, or a Super Bowl, they'll invite me. Not likely at this point. No, I haven't got invited, but I've been as a tourist. That's all good. So Rose, you know, we're getting towards the end of the time where I ask people a particular question. But before I do that, I noticed that you said at the end of your bio, you were explaining what you were doing during COVID and the pandemic. And you said, I got to spend more time with my neighbors, and I got to have coffee, and I got to have more time to really walk and exercise with them. Now, how did all that come about? Because it kind of made me think, well, what was Rose doing prior to the pandemic? Was she ignoring her neighbors? What was going on?
I was
never seen her.
I mean, but especially ones with dogs.
Rose,
I wish I had a dog, but I just don't really have the time.
I hate to ask you to repeat yourself. For some reason, we're having technical problems today. And go ahead and start what you said over again, so everybody hears you.
Oh, I was just going to say that with the pandemic, I was home doing work, and but I didn't have to commute. So at 7 o'clock every morning, I go out and I do a little running. And the only people out there usually are people with dogs. So I got to know my neighbors with dogs. Yeah. And so I've kept it up. I figure since I don't have to commute except one day a week, that I should exercise the morning and something. And I do have a couple of neighbors that I do walk with on a regular basis. So, you know, you have to, you need some, especially during pandemic times. And, you know, the Surgeon General came out with a report about loneliness, and actually hurts your health status as much as, you know, smoking or diabetes or something like that. So we do have to fight that. We have to talk to folks and keep in touch with friends too. So I think that's what we all should do. Keep in friends.
There you go. That sounds so much like you, Rose. I'm not surprised to hear that. I've known you for quite a number of years. That sounds like that's right in your lane. Plus, you said as soon as you had time, you started getting out there, exercising, moving around, having coffee while you're jogging. A lot that's hard to pull off. So that's a fantastic thing. And now you made new friends of neighbors that you wouldn't have made before. So I'm going to tell you what I do at the end of each show. I try to ask each person this question. And the question is, Rose, and when I ask you, I'm going to put you on screen by yourself and let you answer. Here you go. Here's the question. If you were queen for a day and you had the magic wand, the magic scepter, and whatever you said was going to actually happen and happen right now, what would be the first thing you do with that power? And now here I am. I'm going to go off screen and put you on, okay? Hold.
Nobody should go hungry in America or the rest of the world. There should be enough food for everybody. There should be enough food, right? We do have enough food. It's just not spread out enough. So that'd be what I would mean. Okay, thank you.
Rose, no, we're not done. That's just me doing really bad production work. That's why I don't have a job on MSNBC. Well, you know what, Rose? I am not surprised, and I tend to say this every time, but I'm going to start proving this when I say this. But a lot of times I ask people the question, and I almost know based on what I know about them what they're going to answer. And I'm not surprised you gave the answer you gave. But I'm going to prove it. I'm going to write it down ahead of time or do something, because people say, he says that all the time because he hears the answer. He doesn't really know what they're going to say. But I'm not surprised you gave that answer. I was like, she's going to say something like, save the world, get rid of bad people who are doing bad. Yeah, I was pretty close. You talk a lot about food, but you said you want to get rid of hunger in the world. There's no need for people to be hungry. There's plenty of food, right?
It really is. Even with Ukraine.
Even with Ukraine. Say that again. Even with Ukraine, there's say that one more time. I'm so irritated with
even
this.
With the problems with the Ukrainian war is that there's food in Ukraine, but the price went up too. So people in Africa can't afford it.
Wow. So you said even in places where there's war going on and active violence, there's food available, but it's not getting to the people who need it. And
right,
people
because the Russians won't let the
And you're saying
they've
people
got
who
all
live
this grain.
Mm-hmm. And even the people who live, you're saying in certain parts of the world are unable to get access to food because people who have the food are pricing them out of being able to get it.
Yeah. Well, and the Russians are really responsible for that. They really are.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of things that are not only not democratic, but just some people will call just not very humanitarian. Let me ask you this question. I noticed your degrees. I'm going to let you go. You got a BS, an MA, and an MBA. Wow. But your BA is the one out of all of them that I thought to myself, you've got a BA in math, and what's the other thing? And
economics.
Yeah. So what were you intending to do with that when you first got your undergraduate degree? Because you moved into health policy, you moved into other things. You didn't stay in the math or in the technical area. Like maybe I would have thought you would have gone and got something in computer science or other things.
Barely.
Huh?
Yeah, I never really thought about engineering or anything like that. Economics, but I knew I didn't want to do research in economics. That's actually too hard.
Okay. So you knew you
I
wanted
took practical streak in me. That's why.
You had the what? Say it again, Rose, one more time. I apologize.
I have a practical streak.
Okay. And I don't know why.
So I got an MBA.
MBA. Okay. Well, I do want to say this, that you're eminently qualified for what you do. You've got a great heart. You got great technical skills. You've got great management skills. It seems like you could do anything you wanted to do. And obviously you're in pretty good shape too. You're a jogger. So it is fantastic. But I do have to say one thing. I want to appreciate you for coming on to the show. And as we do at every show, we got a little Bob Marley playing. And we want to thank you, Rose, for being on the show.
Okay.
And what we do is we clap you in.
Okay.
We clap you down. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mark.
At the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show live. Come back and see us. Bye, Rose, too.
Okay. Bye.